Right, how are we all doing today?
Still alive.
Well, still alive. Fun fact, this is that time of the semester where it's just important to remind ourselves to just breathe. Okay. I have good news, you guys are like almost halfway through the semester. You got this paper that you're reviewing, and then once you're done with that, you're officially halfway through the semester. So there's some good news for you. I do want to put a little reminder out there for everyone. This is not solely this class, but the reason that I know that this is kind of the high point in the semester is because yesterday, in one day, I received 372 messages from students. So that said, I love every single one of you guys, and I will answer all of those messages, and I did answer all of those messages. But that said, I want you all to know that the expectations, this is an introductory class, right? I want you all to know that my expectations, and I think I can speak for Professor Storm on this as well, is that our expectations are not perfection. And I don't want you guys to hold yourself up on a perfection pedestal, right? What I'm looking for in this class is that you've made an honest to goodness attempt and that you've gained some sort of competency within the tools that we're using. Where I am going to expect a little bit, still not perfection, but a little bit more display of your work product is when we get to module 6 and we start working on a portfolio project, okay? All of these labs, all of these assignments that we're just sort of running through somewhat quickly is building up to get you there, okay? So I want to be really conscientious of that, and I want you guys to all have the same expectations that I have. You guys are here, you're learning. There are new tools. There's new softwares, there's new principles that we're going over. It takes time for some of that to solidify, and it takes practice for some of that to solidify. So just keep practicing with it. And just as a reminder, you literally cannot break it. You just have to go in and try it until you get it right, okay? Any questions on that before I move on? You're good? Okay. Well, wrong switch. There we go. All that said, let me add some more to your brain. I'm going to try to get you guys a little bit ahead. That way you guys have a little bit of lead time going into module 4. So we're going to start talking about typography a little bit. That way you guys can sort of start thinking about it. I have good news. Lab 4.1 should be pretty easy. Everyone knows what typography is, right? Maybe not some of the intricacies, but everyone knows if I say the word typeface or font, everyone kind of knows what that is, right? Great. Everyone knows what size is, right? Okay, you're just taking fonts and doing different sizes, okay? I do have some parameters, but we'll go over that. That's what's in the lecture. So, we're going to start. I've been we've worked with typography a little bit in some of our labs, so I've been telling you all that typography is sort of a great way to start thinking about hierarchy, right? We also didn't cover hierarchy too much. We did a little bit, but we didn't cover it too much in the elements of the principles, right? I probably briefly touched on hierarchy, but maybe didn't go deep. So this is the reason why, is because hierarchy is very often taught through typography. Okay? Typography is a really great example of hierarchy. So, originally I had scheduled the class to where we would be going through anatomy of typography first, and then hierarchy, but I decided to flip it last minute. So, we're going in a slightly different order so that I can frame you up for the lab a little bit better. So before I jump into hierarchy, can anyone tell me what they think hierarchy is?
An order of importance.
Order of importance. I think that's a great definition. Any other definitions that you can think of? I think that's a good one. Let's go with that. By and large, hierarchy is a way to indicate importance. Yeah. And one of the most common ways to do that is through proportion or scale. Right? We learned about that during our elements and principles. If something is bigger, it often feels more important than the things that are smaller, right? Visually, since that top bar, or that top line there is thicker or bigger than the bottom three, it feels like it's the most important thing there, right? You want to look at it because it is bigger and it stands out from the rest of the lines. The broad definition of hierarchy is, though, that the arrangement or organization of elements within a design that guides the viewer's eye through the content in a specific order of importance. Okay, so now we're looking at it from a designer's definition, or a visual media person's definition, right? So with that definition, let's all look to the right for a second. What feels most important? Go down the list.
Black, yellow, red.
So black, yellow, red, right? Did anyone flip the yellow and red? No? One person? Okay. I would say that both ways are correct. I think it's clear that we can say black is obviously the most dominant thing that's there. Color also plays a factor into hierarchy. And since red, particularly this red, is both darker and red, it could throw off the hierarchy a little bit. Okay? So, I would imagine that for most of you, it went something like this, right? Larger than the next one, then the next one. Okay? Kind of ending with the red. Although if you flipped it, that's acceptable too. Yep. So all of that hierarchy actually translates to typography as well. And if you start to think about typography in simpler shapes like this, the bigger the typography, the more it tends to stand out. The more hierarchy it has. Another way to frame that would be the further up the hierarchical list it is. Okay? But contrast and rhythm can also create hierarchy. Okay, so now you can see why we didn't exactly touch on this in the design elements and principles too much, is because you kind of need to know how all of those design elements and principles work before you can look at hierarchy and really understand how hierarchy works. These are all different typefaces, each with their own rhythm. They all have different weights. Not only different weights in scale, right? Like typefaces is bigger than different, is bigger than standout, etc., right? But also in the weight of the font. We're going to get to the difference between font and typeface in a minute. Notice here that typefaces is written in a big, bold font, right? But then down here, standout, it's still kind of bold, but it's not as bold as typefaces. And then different gets a little thinner. And then from there, from each other gets even thinner, right? Actually, maybe different and from each other's are flipped. You can also use things like capitalization, or sometimes the lack of capitalization, to help with this. Although, be careful with that one, particularly in body copy. If you put something in all caps, it can really quickly turn into shouting. Careful with your capitalization. The weight of the typeface or the weight of the font can actually institute hierarchy where thinner fonts feel less important than heavier fonts or bolder fonts, right? This is why usually our headlines are bolder. Sometimes they're a little larger if you're an APA style, right? Your APA headlines are bolder than your body text, right? If you ask me, color is sort of right up there with size when it comes to hierarchy. It's sort of one of the biggest contributors to hierarchy, if you ask me. Size and then probably color. You might have a little tiny font, super thin, but then you put it in red and all of a sudden it's much more important, right? Especially when everything else is like gray or something drab, that red is going to really stand out. It's going to catch the viewer's eye, not only because it's a different color, but also because it's a warm color, right? There's a reason why we don't tend to make like those really important things, I don't know, blue or green. We go for red because our eye naturally alerts itself to red, right? Unless you're colorblind. Something I want you all to keep in mind, I think I touched on this a little bit in a previous lecture, is that warm colors come forward, cold colors fall back, right? So in a design, an illustration, if you have both warm and cold colors, so your warm colors being your red, orange, your yellow, some yellowish greens, although that gets a little touchy, and then your cool colors being green, blue, purple. A lot of blacks can tend to be considered, although they're neutral, they can tend to lean a little bit towards the cool side. And then similarly, a lot of whites, even though they're neutral, they can tend to lean towards the warm side. There are variations to that. Obviously, if you are working with a white and you're adding a touch of blue, okay, you change the spectrum a little bit. You're actually working with blue, not white, right? So warm colors come forward, cold colors recede. And just a quick reminder of one of our other design principles, contrast. Right? Contrast can help highlight the difference between content. Right? We can use that same principle with typography as well. Okay? And we can use it within typography to help us create that hierarchy. In this example, there is no contrast. Everything is of equal importance here, right? The header, the subhead, the body copy are all equally important here. And when everything has the same importance, nothing does. Nothing's important, right? If you've ever gone to a website and you're just greeted with this wall of bullet points, there's a reason you don't read that, and because you don't want to. It's not important, okay? This is a great example of really bad hierarchy. Okay? Everything is flat. Nothing's important here, and the reader is going to sort of glance right over this. Okay? Even though, yeah, like this section might be bigger, but I would argue that's drawing attention to the wrong thing. Body copy section, from a shape perspective, is bigger. But you probably want people to read the header and then the subheader first. Okay? There's nothing wrong with the content per se. It's just how we've designed it. So if we take that header and increase the size and the weight so that the reader knows what's important, maybe we should capitalize the subhead, give it a little bit more importance there. Make sure that the line length of the body copy is limited to 45 to 75 characters, right? So here, this is your body copy. Limit that to about 45 characters to 75 characters. That's a really good principle. Now, I don't expect anyone to come in here and be like, 1, 2, 3, 4, Does everyone know what I'm talking about when I say line length? From one end of the line to the other end, right? Not the whole paragraph, right?
May
So you
I
want, yes, please.
may I offer some accessibility
Yes,
ideas here as well?
absolutely.
So your paragraph, your line height should be at least 1.5 or 150% of the size of the font so that it's easier for people to read.
Yeah.
That is not necessarily the most common thing. The other thing, which I think is really interesting, is that when you have all caps, people tend to, when they're reading fast, people tend to look at the shape of the word and the negative space around the word. And so when all of the words are rectangles, you're slowing down your reader and slowing down their, increasing their cognitive load. And so that can be a trick that you're trying to get them to slow down, but it also can really annoy people. So
yes, it can.
an entire paragraph that's all caps is going to really slow people down.
Yes,
I know it does with me. So
yep.
Fun facts to know and tell.
Good ad. So really quick, just to cover that, just because we're going to go over anatomy next week, and I've got a little bit about like the line height or the line. Sorry, I put length there. It should be height. Line height is the space from, we'll go over anatomy next week, but there's baseline here that is the bottom of the text, and then what is called the cap height. I think I'm saying this correctly. Trying to remember how it's measured, but I think it's from baseline to cap height. And what Professor Storm is saying is that that should be 150% of the height of your text. There are all kinds of ways to do that within the software. That way you don't have to sit there and do that.
Yeah, the easy way to think about this, like if you have 12-point font, then your line height needs to be 18 point.
Yep. Yep. There we go. Okay. So I think we all can agree that this looks a little better than this. Yes. Question.
Sorry, good question.
Yeah.
Is that basically like 1.5 line spacing?
Correct.
And does that mean that there's basically like 3 like above and below the 12-point font? Like if it's 18, or you're saying there's 18 in between?
No. So the line height is measured using points just like type is. So what's happening there is it's saying that you're not necessarily adding 3 more.
What I meant to say is like, is there 6 points between the lines then? Or between the
12 minus 18, that's 6. Yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly what it is.
Okay.
Yep, good question. Okay, so this is better. Yes? Arguably, a little bit better. This is clearly a little bit more digestible than where we were at, right? Perhaps as the reader, you have a little bit of a better idea of what order this is meant to be read in, right? If you're looking for some specific information, it's a little bit easier for you to scan the headlines. If you sort of think you're in the right spot, then you can double check and you can read the body copy, right? Guys, this is the problem with our news, right? You've used all the things that we've mentioned up until this point, right? You've used scale, you've used proportion, line length. All of that is happening within here to help give us a little bit of a clearer hierarchical order, okay? But then what happens when we have a lot more stuff in here, right? It only gets worse as we add more content, right? There's more for us to start thinking about. If you're trying to show what we would call a descending hierarchy, this is not the way you want to do it, right? You have no idea what's more important here, other than the fact that I've numbered them, right? You can't tell that those headers are trying to convey sub-information other than the fact that they are numbered and they're labeled, right? You got a question?
Wouldn't the way that you normally read the language kind of define that hierarchy, even if there isn't, like for me, like if I would read it, I'd read from top to bottom, left to right.
Yeah.
So I'd follow that order. I go from top to bottom and then I go from left to right.
That is a defining factor, but what happens when the designer needs to subvert that?
But would you want to though? Because in general, when you're reading from left to right, unless obviously the language that or you're writing in is different, but like in English, you're always going to go from left to right. I don't know if, like with typography, I don't know if you'd want to do that. Like with actual visual objects, yes, you could obviously try and change the direction, but with typography, would you want to do that?
So what happens when you start designing a product that is released both in the US and in Japan? Gotcha.
Typography would be different though.
The typography would be different, and oftentimes you would have a slightly different design, but those designs still need to work within an ecosystem. It still needs to be distinctly that brand. So we actually ran into this at Yamaha where we had displays that we were putting on bikes, and sorry, the money, the company might be making billions of dollars a year, but they're not going to invest in two different displays, one for the US, one for Japan. Right? So what's going to happen? They're going to design it for their larger market, which is the US, and then they're going to take that design and subvert it and make it work for their Japanese market, but they're still going to use all the same colors, all the same placement, all the same everything. For the most part. There are exceptions to that. But yeah, I mean, you are correct that the way in which we read something can contribute to the hierarchy, but you may not always be able to rely on it. Right? So, that said, let's make this a little bit better, shall we? Hey, that's a little clearer, right? Suddenly this just is a little bit easier to read. It's not perfect, but it's better than what we had back here, right? For each header, we've obviously increased the font weight. And as the header hierarchy descends, so we have 4 different header sizes now. So as that hierarchy descends, so does the scale, the physical scale of that typography, right? Similarly, the subhead, we left that capitalized because that's although it's a very rare good decision to capitalize most things. You want to try to avoid that at all costs, but sometimes it is a stylistic decision. So here we chose to capitalize the subhead, and we've added color to draw the eye a little bit, right? Quick poll, did anyone not even see that there was a subhead on the previous page? One person? So back here, everyone read that word subhead at the top? Okay. Oftentimes classes miss it, so you guys are just a little bit more astute than maybe the others. Here's a very, sorry, there's a question back here. Yeah, you're good.
If you were to actually have this like on a site, would you align the headers or the bodies of text since they're on the same site?
That gets interesting. So for online, the question was, if I'm working with this on a website or in a design, would I go in and would I align those headers and the body copy a little bit? It sort of depends. Because again, you're working with those headers at different sizes, and what's probably driving you nuts is that the alignment is off between the paragraphs.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm a little kooky about it, but there may not always be a good way to do it. So here, we've established that our height between the body paragraph and the header is something, right? Over here, we're trying to keep that spacing similar. So you're going to have a trade-off on what it is that you're spacing. So you kind of have to make a creative decision there and say, okay, are we going to align the headers or are we going to adopt the similar spacing, right? And you will have designers and developers that will justify it both ways. I am also tired. Deal with my words today. Yes.
Would you recommend like grouping like the header 1 and 2 separately from the 3 and 4, and then like kind of making the header 3 and 4 centered to the?
Stop getting ahead of me. We're gonna make this better. To answer your question, there are a lot of different. I wouldn't even structure it like this. We're not working with enough content here for it to be worth having 4 different sized headers. I'm just demonstrating. But ideally, with the amount of copy that we have here, I would have 1 header size and 1 body copy size and 1 subhead size. But for demonstration purposes, thank you for critiquing my work. All right, this is going to be important for your guys' labs. Take notes. There is a very simple way to create very clear hierarchy. There are actually several different ways that you can create very clear hierarchy, and you guys are going to work with all of them. Now, again, you guys, I don't think I've told this to you guys yet, so maybe I'm going to rescind mine again. But there's a thing that I do. I say things very often to try to get them to stick in your head. One of those things that I say is that design has a lot of guidelines, but very few rules, right? This is one of those examples where I'm going to give you guys these guidelines, but they are by no means rules. These are just starting points, okay? Some of these are mathematics, so they do feel a little bit more like rules, and I want you to use them like they're rules in the lab, but out in the industry, you can get a little bit more broad with this. So I can tell you to make the header 2 times the size of your body copy, and your subhead 1.5 times the size of your body copy. But this works here, right? Every single design is situational. This is just a starting point, and you can sort of adjust things up and down from here, okay? So here's an example. If your body copy is 16 points, because we've established that, mind you, we're doing a little bit of algebra here, so bear with me. If your body copy is 16 points, 1.5 times 16 is 24, and then 2 times 16 is 32. Okay? Who's lost? Recognize we're doing math. I'm no mathematician myself, but this is a really good baseline for how to structure your hierarchy within typography. So that said, let me stop sharing for a second. Everyone watch your eyes. Blink. There we go. I think we have new markers in here. How exciting. I'm gonna give you guys an easy one. Okay. If my body copy is 10 points, what is my subhead? 15 points. What's my header? 20 points. All right, good. We all paid attention in math. Good job. Let's ramp up the heat a little bit. If my body copy is 13 points, all right, break out the calculators. What's my subhead?
19.5.
Whoa, 19.5. Then what's my header?
6.
There we go. Okay. Everyone understands how that works? Good. That was the easy one. Get back into it here. Presentation go. There we go. Nope. There we go. All right, the next one That's kind of a familiar word, right? Golden ratio. So slightly more complicated, but to some, perhaps a little bit more appealing, or a more appealing way to scale typography is to just use the golden ratio, which is taking whatever your base or your body copy is, and then multiplying that by 1.618 for each tier of typography. Okay, so using the same example that we had before, someone get your calculator, I can't do this in my head. If we had 16, yeah, we had 16 points as our body copy, what would my subhead be? 25.88, which we would just round to 26 because ain't nobody likes decimals. And then what would our header be? Ah, we're confused now. 42.068, which we would just round to 42. Okay. Golden ratio makes sense? Awesome. I think we did the math right, yeah? Okay, so 16 points, 26, 42. Okay, looks something like that. You can certainly do this. This is a great way to scale typography. Lots of designers will live, breathe, and die by the golden ratio, and that is okay by them. If you ask me, it's a little bit old school. Okay. Also, in digital design, it's generally best to follow what we would call the rule of eights. Okay. I normally save this until we start talking about Figma, but let me stop sharing my screen for a second. Rule of eights. Can anyone tell me why the rule of eights might be important? I'm being a little Socratic, I apologize.
Works with many pixels and devices.
What was that?
Works with pixels and devices.
Okay, so that's actually correct. What is our normal device? I'm going to get ahead of myself here. You guys aren't going to know the answer to this. 1440 is a good width to design for in Figma. That's like your desktop width. You might be wondering where I'm getting that number from. Most devices are like 1080 or 4K. You don't need to design that big. Okay, you need to design to 1440 because then the developers can scale it up really easy. I'll explain why. 1440, what's half of 1440? What's half of 720? What's nice about that?
All halves.
They're all whole numbers. Desktop? Tablet? Mobile. You all have probably gone into Figma at some point. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. That's okay. We're not even in that part of the class yet. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. But if you use these numbers, we're going to go a little bit further. What's 1440 divided by 8?
180.
What's 720 divided by 8?
90.
What's 360 divided by 8?
45.
What's nice about that?
Also whole numbers.
They're also whole numbers. You don't have to worry about decimal points. So as you're going in and doing your typography within your UI, you don't have to worry about using decimals. You can always set your points in rules of 8, 8, 16, 24, 32, 48, 56. It all breaks after about 48 in my head, so I apologize for my math. Whoops. There we go. So that said, get this pulled back up. There we go. So if you don't want to use the golden ratio, it's pretty damn close to the rule of eights. Okay. So the rule of eights is really just using that we just did. And it's kind of an in-between between the first one we did where we're just multiplying, but instead of multiplying by 1.5 or 2x, we're just multiplying 8s. Okay. 8 by 2, 8 by 3, 8 by 4, etc. Okay. So the rule of 8 produces the same, or by and large, a very similar result, but is also much easier to remember than the golden ratio, which gives you some annoying fractions of points to work with, that you sort of then probably will end up rounding anyways and probably landing somewhere close to the rule of 8s. Yes?
Do they all have to maintain a certain ratio, or I can just skip? Like for example, like I will make the header like 8 by 20. That's just very big, and then 8 by 10.
I can't think of it. I mean,
Like,
8 by 20 is huge. So that's a lot. But yeah, I mean, you can set up whatever scale you want. You can skip, that's fine. You'll see when we get to Figma that using the rule of 8s, if you are religious enough about it, it works for everything. It becomes like a whole design philosophy as opposed to it just being like, oh yeah, everything's 8s in here. I have had interviewers that will like literally go into a UI and physically measure if you're doing things with rule of 8s, just to kind of see if you're religious about your design principles. It's wild. I think that's a little excessive.
is that good or bad?
I don't think it's good or bad. I just think they care a lot. But I've given you those 3. So pick your poison. Okay? Find one that works for you in the applications that you use primarily. You guys are going to experiment with all 3 of those in your guys' lab. Okay? So be familiar with all 3. Be prepared to execute all 3, but those are there. So take a look at this poster with me for a second. Not including the red bar on the left, right? Just the white part. Give me the order that you think that this should go in hierarchically. We'll do one person at a time. Who wants to be the first victim? What's the most important thing on the page?
School of life.
School of life. Probably life more than the school of, right? Okay, good job. What's next? I heard 2 answers. A little bit of both, right? The school of and typographic hierarchy are about the same size. So they're sort of competing for attention, right? There's the next one. There's the next one. What comes next? We're in harder territory.
The headings or
Headings.
the grids.
Yeah. All right, what's next?
Or the body of whatever the thing.
Body copy?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. Good job. All right. I want to walk you guys through InDesign really quick. We're going to go into, I want to give you guys plenty of lead time. That way you guys have some time to do this. This lab is not overly difficult. You're literally just going to set up those type scales. So that said, same rules apply. Be mindful about the fonts you choose for this because it is going to go into your larger paper project. Everything is going to mesh in this module. Okay? The paper that you wrote in module 1 is going to come back to haunt you. The images that you chose in module 1 are going to come back to haunt you. The reviews that or the peer reviews that you're writing right now, those will be out of the way. But your name is going to be on whatever anyone else designs, so that'll come back to haunt you. But everything's going to start to come together at this point, okay? By the end of module 4, you guys will have taken the paper that you guys wrote. You will have designed a logo for the journal that you're submitting to. You will have made a magazine cover for the artist that you're featuring in your paper, and then you will have used your paper to have filled out the magazine article within the paper. Okay? So all of this is actually starting to build up to something that is going out in the world. Okay? So that said, let's crack open InDesign. InDesign is an interesting software. Actually, I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna set up a little different. Give me a sec. There we go. So InDesign has some quirks, if you ask me. It's a little bit of Illustrator with I don't even know what. Okay. This should feel pretty familiar, right? We come up to the top left and we just create a new file. That's it. You're going to get these really weird natural inclusions over here, and those are called picas. You don't want those. I can't think of anyone who knows what the hell a pica is, except for those of us that have been in the industry for long enough to know what they are. Picas are a subdivisible measurement of inches and centimeters and all of that. I can't measure in picas, so I'm going to switch to inches. Because that's normal. If you are centimeters, that's fine too. That is also cool. We're going to do a letter size piece of paper, 8.5 by 11. Someone who's international, tell me what that is in centimeters, and it should be in the lab. I might give some slightly different directions on sizing in the lab, so just double check that. Okay. I'm going to set mine up horizontally. You can set yours up how it says in the lab. I just want to have more screen real estate to work with for you guys. Okay. I want to go over a couple of other things in here. You can set the number of pages that you want to have automatically populate. You can add more later, but we know how many pages we're going to need for this lab, right? 3, I think. Double check me. I'm going to do 3. You can also set up your layout in InDesign. And what I mean by that is we all probably want some sort of structure to follow. Columns, grids, that kind of stuff. We'll get into grids in a couple weeks. You don't necessarily have to set up columns for this lab, but I'm going to set mine up with an 8-column grid. And I'm going to make my columns 0.125 inches. Okay? That's just what I like. You can make that sort of whatever you want. Margins. Who wants to tell me what a margin is? I'm seeing a lot of people drawing boxes. What does that mean? Borders? Borders? That's a good way to describe it. Margins are kind of like borders. It's the space inside the page that you want an area of, okay? I'm going to set mine at 1/2 inch all the way around. That's totally fine. Bleed, we hopefully remember this from Illustrator, right? So what's a bleed? The area outside the frame. That way, if you have color that goes all the way across the frame, there's some space for that color to go out without leaving a white band around the edge. Okay? And then we have a new one. This is called a slug. You guys don't have to worry about the slug, but the slug is an area where you can leave marks for the printer. I've been doing this for 12 years, and I think I've used slug twice. And that's for typically for very large publications. Something that the printer kind of needs to know something special, like if something folds out or whatever. So don't worry about the slug. Go ahead and hit create. And you will be presented with this beautiful setup, okay? We can see that we've got 3 pages here, right? 1, 2, 3. There's a divider in the middle. You have to think about InDesign like you're working with an open book, okay? Technically speaking, this top one, that's your cover. And then these are your, what we would call spreads, okay? The internal pages, when you open the book, you've got one on the left, one on the right. Okay? So, that said, we're going to make our type hierarchy. Come up here, choose a typeface. Make it something good. Someone earlier asked me what my favorite font was, and I said that's a lot like choosing your favorite kid, and I'm okay with choosing my favorite kid, and that is Poppins. The that's just for right now. That'll probably change in 3 or 4 years.
So it doesn't matter, is it sans serif or serif?
Doesn't matter if it's sans serif or serif, your choice.
So I can use open sans.
What was it?
Open sans.
Open Sans? Yeah, you could use Open Sans. Don't use Comic Sans because I'll get a hammer and. Yeah, keep in mind the sort of forbidden fonts. I don't want to see Myriad. I don't want to see. Well,
Are you sure you don't
Papyrus.
want
Times New Roman.
I don't want Papyrus. I don't want Comic Sans. I don't want Joker. I don't want Curls MT.
Roman.
What was that?
Times New Roman.
Times New Roman's a little. Here's the thing.
Basic.
Times New Roman, she did hard work, and it's time for her to retire. I think we're all a little traumatized by Times New Roman at this point. All right, so I'm going to set up my body copy first. Let me do regular, but that way it's a little bit easier. I'm going to make mine larger than you guys should probably make yours. That way you guys are able to see it. I would say that if you ask me, a good starting size for body copy is usually 8 to 10 points. Okay. 8 is a little on the small side, but it is still legible at print. Okay. On digital, way too small. Okay. You guys are designing this for print, so we can work with an 8-point type. 10 is a little bit better for anyone like me who wears some of these that go on their face and make you see better. Glasses, right? So I'm gonna set mine up at 16 points just to be a little extra. You guys can go down a little further. Yeah. How did I get the columns? That was back when I set up the page. So over here, if I go to new document, I got the columns right here. Okay. So mine's 16 points. You can go a little smaller if you want to. So there's my headline. You can also, don't treat this, for those of you guys that are fans of Figma, don't treat InDesign like Figma. All of the type can go in one type box. It's okay. Stop breaking up the type. Even in Figma, stop breaking up the type. The reason for that is that you end up with weird type flows that can just, if you're working in publication, you'll thank me. Actually, this should have said, let me go. I'm going to show you guys a cool trick. God damn it. There we go. This website right here, you can come down here and you can generate a bunch of lorem ipsum. Sometimes in publishing, we used to say Greeking it up. I don't even think this is Greek. I'm pretty sure it's Latin. Yeah. But that's what the industry calls it. So we just go with our, oh no, I've got a gray box. What happened here? Guys, don't panic. What's happening? Actually, let me make sure I know what's happening before I tell you what's happening. Settings. My GPU settings. Then I have to remember it. Nope, that shouldn't be it. Okay, so sometimes InDesign likes to take a crap. It's a good time to just shut her down, reopen. Okay, this happens. Get used to it. It is a pain of the program. And when, does anyone here remember when Adobe almost bought Figma for $20 billion? This is why we were all shitting bricks, was because we were afraid that they were going to take Figma and make it suck. All right, let me set this back up really quick. All right, there we go. Now we're working again, okay? Don't ask me why that happened. Sometimes it's just InDesign. Although, if that does happen, you can check some settings and sometimes fix it. It's usually just quicker to save it, shut it down, open it. Let me set up Poppins again. Okay, there we go. So we've got our body copy in here. Now I want to add a headline. I can come in here. Let's do a sub-headline. Good. So if my body copy is 12 points and we are going 1.5 times the size of 12, what is my subheadline?
Multiply that.
So yeah, this is something super cool. You don't have to do the math. You can literally do it in the box here. You can go put an asterisk for multiply, 1.5, and it'll do it for you. You're welcome. Yep, I'll do it for the headline. How about that? So now if my headline, actually, let me just type it in. If my headline is 2 times the size of my body copy, I can come up to, and let me actually point out really quick, your guys' workspace might look a little different, okay? I would recommend, personally, you come over to this drop down here, and you're probably in Essentials, yeah? It looks something like this. I would recommend either Advanced, or my personal favorite is Essentials Classic. Everyone's got their thing. You're gonna get more on the window, so you don't have to go and find it, okay? So once you have that, then you can come over here to the text box, and you can just asterisk 2. So multiply by 2. Enter, done, okay? You've just created a type scale. That is one of them. Then you'll take this, copy it, duplicate it onto this page, and you'll do the golden ratio. And then you'll take that, copy it, do it on this page, and you'll do the rule of 8s. Any questions? No? Yes.
Line height is like different for those ones. And
Good question. Okay, so line height. In Illustrator, I'm just gonna select these. Up here, you have, I would just recommend for this lab, set your line height to auto. Okay. If you are working in the design industry, I would never for the love of my life recommend that you use auto. But for this lab, since you guys are getting introduced to InDesign, just use auto for this one. What auto is going to do is I think it's just shy of like this 150%. It might be 130% or something like that. But that's a good baseline. Just set the line height to auto. And it's this guy right here. It looks like 2 letters stacked on top of each other with pointer arrows in between. Cool? Any other questions? Is anyone else seeing anything weird out there? We're good? All right. Have a wonderful weekend. That's it. Go on and get.
Is that
Assignment number.
That's lab 4.1. We are ahead of schedule. So if you want to work on it ahead of time, you're welcome to. Make sure to prioritize the papers. I am trying to give you guys a little extra lead time to work on Module 4 because I want you guys to have time to work on the later assignments in Module 4. So I'm going to try to keep you guys ahead of schedule a little bit, okay? You don't think? I'll go in and I'll open them then.
Yeah.
All right, have a great week. Online, we're good?
You're careful. Yeah.
All right, have a good one.
Are you serious?
I'm making